when people demonized you and attacked you 100 times more than they attacked me, because all this stuff's coming true now. This guy was an icon who stood up against him, and he does 4 or 5 hours of radio every day warning the planet. And so I wanted, I know most of you know him, but I came to here, not just you, and not just to give a speech, but to talk to Dr. Stan Monteith. So I wanted to spend 15, 20 minutes crystallizing the fact that he's seen this huge awakening and where society's going, and for us to count the cost and decide which side of this equation we're on. Liberty or tyranny? You go ahead, sir. You got the floor. You take it away.
Well, I'm not going to take very long because I think that Alex really is doing the most amazing job. You know, I've been at this for 48 years now, but I've never seen as much enthusiasm as I've seen in the last few years. And things are getting worse and worse. Now, don't believe them when they tell you that things are going to get better. That the housing market's going to stabilize? No, it's not. The housing market's going to continue to fall, and more people are going to continue losing their homes. They tell you that the jobs are coming back. The jobs are not coming back. They've been sent overseas, and they're going to stay there. Why are they going to stay there? Because there is a plan. Now, most people really don't know what the plan is, but it's called globalism. It's an organized effort to lower the living standards in the United States and raise the living standards throughout the world so we can have a one world government, a one world religion, and a one world ruler. Now, if you want to document this, it's all in something called the Earth Charter, written by Stephen Rockefeller, the nephew of David Rockefeller, by Mikhail Gorbachev, and by Marie Strong. And there in point 10A of the Earth Charter, they say, we're going to have equitable distribution of wealth between nations. Now, how do you get equitable distribution of wealth between the United States and China? Why, you lower living standards in the United States, and you raise living standards in China and in India and all throughout the world. And this is really what's happening, but they cannot tell the American people because most of you are so selfish, you don't want to give up your home. You don't want to give up your pension. You don't want to give up your Social Security and your Medicare benefits and all the wonderful things that we have in this country. But you must understand, ladies and gentlemen, the America we have known has ceased to exist and will never exist again during our lifetime. But the one thing we can hope is we're going to be able to preserve an element of freedom. Now, how are they sending our jobs overseas? Well, it's a process known as offshoring manufacturing. And what we do is we take a manufacturer and we say to them, look, you're paying 35% corporate income tax in the United States. How you'd like to not have to pay any taxes at all. You move your factory over to China, you don't have to pay any corporate taxes, you can keep that money, you can invest it throughout the world, you can set up new manufacturing in all sorts of countries. How many of you here, if you were offered that, opportunity to make hundreds of millions of dollars, wouldn't take the opportunity? And that's what our great corporations are doing. Furthermore, they can get abundant labor. There's all sorts of labor over there, cheap labor. They don't have to put up with the bureaucracy, the harassment they have here. They do not have to actually pay unemployment insurance, workman's compensation insurance, FICA taxes. They're actually given loans. You can get a loan if you go over there. We're doing everything we can to encourage our corporations to move overseas. And of course, the reason they do that is because they can bring their products back in here because we don't have taxes. What we need to do, of course, is to protect our economy. Yes, it'd be nice to help the rest of the world, but first of all, we've got to save America. And anybody who talks about tariffs now is called a protectionist. Oh, you're a protectionist. Why don't you know if we put up tariffs, why we would have all sorts of people out of work? If we put up tariffs, we'd have tremendous trade deficits. Ladies and gentlemen, we have people out of work. The real unemployment is not 9.6%. It's close to 20%. If you use the U6 unemployment figures, which are put out by the Bureau of Labor Statistics but never mentioned by the controlled media, and then you take away the birth-death ratio, it comes up to over 20%. If you calculate unemployment today, as they did during the Great Depression, over 20%, how many times have you heard that from Rush Limbaugh? Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand, number one, the press is controlled in America. It's controlled by 5 or 6 great corporations. 90% of the press is controlled through interlocking directorates. And we're talking about Time Warner, Bertelsmann, which is a European corporation, Viacom, which runs CBS, Disney, which runs ABC, Fox, which runs the Wall Street Journal, and Fox News, that's Rupert Murdoch. And then, of course, the sixth is Comcast. They just bought up General Electric, and they just bought up NBC. Most people don't understand that literally all of the major news magazines and major newspapers and the major networks are intertwined in what I call the Brotherhood of Darkness. Intertwining in the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and all these things that Alex talks about and he's talked to you many times about. But they have an organized program to destroy this country. Now, first of all, you offshore our manufacturing. 8 million jobs are gone, they're not coming back again. They're outsourcing our jobs, and that means, of course, Obama recently gave $23 million to an educational facility over in India to teach Indians how to speak better English so that they can have our answering jobs over there, and we can move our answering services overseas. Because they can do our architecture, they can do our engineering, they can read our CT scans and CAT scans and all the sort of things, medical. I mean, in fact, there are between 25 and 42 million jobs that can leave America and be done just as well overseas, according to Dr. Alan Binder, who's a professor of economics at Princeton. What they're talking about is impoverishing the American people. They're encouraging people to come in from other countries, well-trained people with H-1B visas who work for much less. They're refusing to enforce our immigration laws. Why? Because they want the illegal immigrants to come in so that it will work for less and drive down our wages. Now, right now, people aren't hurting too badly. I mean, we've got unemployment insurance. It's been extended out to 2 years. You get 50% of what you were making before. But what happens when the federal government runs out of money? You can't keep borrowing money. And eventually what happens, and of course we're going to see this within about 10 years, is that they'll be putting out certainly more for insurance on the national debt and for Social Security and Medicaid. Then all the money that comes in, there won't be anything left over for unemployment insurance, there won't be anything left over for the military. All of these programs, these wonderful programs, are going to come to an end. And that's exactly what they want. Who are they? Well, they're the Trilateral Commission. All you need to do is, of course, you go back and read what Barry Goldwater told us back in 1979, his book, No Apologies, when he said this group is international. Their goal is to take over the financial and commercial interests of the world by first taking over the government of the United States. What have they done? Well, from 1977 to 2008, every president and or vice president of the United States came from the membership rolls of the 87 members of the North American chapter of the Trilateral Commission. Do you think that happened by accident? 6 of the 8 presidents of the World Bank who controls world finance came from this little group. 8 of the 10 World Trade representatives who determine our trade policies. 7 of the 12 secretaries of state, 9 of the secretaries of defense. They control our government. And Rush Limbaugh is never going to tell you. And Sean Hannity isn't going to tell you. And Glenn Beck isn't going to tell you. But Alex Jones will. Yeah. That Alex is on the radio locally here, that Michael Zwerling has had the courage to put him on. Alex is doing a great job. He's picking up. I mean, I'm not going to be around. I'm 81. I'm not going to be around any that much longer. But it's great to know that we have people who are going to be able to stand up and tell the truth.
Thank you. Wow. I was just here a week ago, right, Dr. Monteith? Wow. I didn't know I was going to be here today. The Lord surely moves in mysterious ways, doesn't he? Actually, Alex and I become very good friends, but this is the first time we've ever met in person. And it's always really great. So make sure somebody takes a picture of us later on. But, and I came in with Joe Bannister.
And the guy that just had me here a week ago, we talked about him, Dr. Monteith, you ought to stand up, make sure you wave at everybody, make sure they know where you are. Yeah. Okay. How do you follow that? Yeah, Alex Jones, wow. The first thing that comes to my mind is, I'm not worthy. But I sure appreciate all of your support a great deal. And this has been really a whirlwind tour. I can't even remember where I've been the last 3 weeks. All I know is I haven't been home. And my wife reminded me of that. I was actually supposed to fly home tonight. We found out about your event here, and we postponed going home, and we came here to be with you good people. There are lots of solutions, but I think the most powerful one to do what Alex said, to keep this peaceful, is we got to have our law enforcement and sheriffs on board with us. Yes. They've got to be on our side. And so I'm doing everything I can to educate them and to get them on board with doing one little thing, being an oath keeper. Back when I was sheriff, I decided that going along with the Brady bill in the federal government was going to violate my oath of office, and I said no. And I decided that I was going to sue the federal government. I was going to sue the Clinton administration. And when I told that to my wife, I don't want any of you to think that she was all excited about that. Because she wasn't, and I wasn't. It scared me to death. You see, I'd seen those lists of people who crossed Bill Clinton, and I didn't want to be on it. And my wife really didn't want me to be on it either. And so there was a time when I was doing all this that I thought, maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. And as I look back, I have to tell you, I shouldn't have filed the lawsuit. I'm glad I have the decision now because it entirely backs up the 10th Amendment and what I believe is the solution. The solution is SS, state sovereignty. Yes. And then the local officials know and understand that it is not their prerogative, but it is their obligation and their duty to prevent the federal government from abusing you. We win. And, as I said, this is a peaceful solution. This is what I am about. That's what he is about. The solution can be peaceful and effective when we have local law enforcement, sheriffs, county attorneys. That's going to be a stretch. But county commissioners who know their duty to put themselves in the way, as Madison expressed it, that we can safely rely on their disposition to erect barriers against the encroachments of the national authority. And as Madison also expressed it, that we actually interpose ourselves on behalf of the people to keep them safe and from becoming victims of the federal government's tyranny. We can keep that peaceful and effective, and now that I'm being successful in this movement, what happens? Bob Schultz and I both are blasted as supporters of violence and lethal force in Time magazine in the October 12th issue just 2 weeks ago. Yeah, we're both in Time magazine. It's on the front cover. It has some picture of some dangerous militia guy from Ohio, and I don't know him. Okay? And yet, the title of the article, front page, by this Bart Gelman guy, who I'd never heard of either before this, and he follows me around the country and wants to know what my solution is, and I keep telling him it's a peaceful one. And so what does he put in Time magazine? That I support lethal force against the federal government. And it's all in, and so what is the article? The secret world of extreme militias. And so Sam Bushman from Liberty Roundtable calls the bureau chief, name is Mike Duffy, the bureau chief of Time magazine in Washington, D.C., calls him. And he says, do you know Sheriff Mack? I said, yeah, I've seen his YouTube stuff. He says, Is there anything secret about what Sheriff Mack is doing? No, I don't have any evidence of that. Is there anything that shows that he's part of the militia movement? No, we don't have any evidence of that. Is there anything in his message that it supports violence in any way? He refused to answer. And so I called the guy, same guy too, and he says, oh, Sheriff, we know we didn't do anything wrong, but we'll print any editorial you hand us. And I'll personally walk it through. But you obviously have other options. Well, I'm going to take advantage of those. So if any of you hear that we came into money, it was from Time Magazine. Real briefly, I tell you, I got so excited hearing Alex, I don't want to take very long. So I want to get him back up here, and maybe Joe Bannister to say a couple of things too. But this is the whole thing about my lawsuit against the federal government. We shouldn't have asked permission from the courts to keep our oath of office. State sovereignty isn't something you take to courts. State sovereignty is something you enforce, you implement, you stand with it as the ultimate check and balance against the federal government's encroachments. There is something in the Constitution. There is a mechanism established by our founders that put us in the power seat to keep the federal government off our back. And it's called the 10th Amendment. It's called state sovereignty. It's called standing and doing what you know is right. Just everything Alex has been saying. But do that in your own backyard. If any of you think that that's going to happen in Washington, D.C., I've got beachfront property for you in Omaha. It's not going to happen there. And so, if you look at all the sheriffs in history that have ever sued the federal government and won a case at the United States Supreme Court, you'll not find very many. Ultimately, there were 7 sheriffs who joined this lawsuit that went to the Supreme Court, and Sheriff Prince and myself actually ended up at the U.S. Supreme Court. And on June 27, 1997, the United States Supreme Court ruled this: but the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. You see, they got it. And they didn't make up something new. They didn't give their opinion. They supported the Founding Fathers' intent of the 10th Amendment and of states' rights, and they actually reinforced the Constitution. And that's why this ruling is so powerful. And you need to make sure, go to sheriffmack.com and make sure you get some of these decisions yourself. Because I ran out in Sacramento, I would have brought them here tonight. But I have a little pocket-sized form, just like the pocket-sized constitutions. I have the Supreme Court decision. It's called the Victory for State Sovereignty. It's about 15 pages is all. It takes 10 minutes to read about the principle that the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. It divides power among sovereigns and among branches of government precisely so that we may resist the temptation to concentrate power in one location as an expedient solution to the crisis of the day. End quote. You see, did you get that last part? The crisis of the day? What's the Obama administration motto? Never let a good crisis go to waste. And so now they actually bring out that principle in this decision, in the Mack Prince case. And he reinforces the power of the states. If every one of your local officials, your county officials, will support and defend and uphold the principle, that one sentence, that the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions, we win. We get our freedom back tomorrow. Never forget that we, the people, have the ultimate power. The 10th Amendment says it, that all powers not delegated to the federal government or the United States Congress are reserved to the states or to the people. This is where it's at. We can win all this. And now, before I sit down, I want to ask you one thing. I'm going to get political here for a second. Okay? If Ron Paul was running for governor in California on a third-party ticket, would you vote for him? Me too. In fact, you can tell him if he runs for president, I'll be his vice president. There's a Ron Paul running in California on a third ticket. Her initials are Shalene Nightingale. Okay? There's not one of you. Okay, there's no one. I've endorsed her. I'm putting my life on the line with her. I'm putting my name with her. There's not anyone that should compromise their vote for those two mainstream candidates and think that that's going to get California anywhere. Vote your conscience, vote for the Ron Paul candidate, and let's take a stand for freedom. Last of all. Okay? Everyone, do not compromise your vote. Yeah, let's do it. In closing, I'd just like to say this. It's an honor to share the stage with Alex. It's absolutely an honor. And in closing, I'd just like to leave you with one little thought. Of all the people that sued Bill Clinton, I was the only one to do so on a non-sexual matter.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.